I'm Dave, and today you join us at the glorious Bluebell Lakes, where we're going to be in session discussing everything to do with PVA and how I feel using PVA on busy pressured day ticket complexes like Bluebells can be a massive edge. How I think PVA can benefit everyone as an angler, I'm going to show you exactly what I do. I have done well on it in the past, namely Mallard, which is the area where we're going to target today. We've had a walk around and it looks moody. It is absolutely roasting. There's fish cruising about but not really taking mixes, and there's not a lot of fish coming out, but we're going to try our best, and I'm really confident in the approach we're going to take with PVA. The fish have spawned really heavily in the last week, so it could be a bit moody, but with fishing PVA, it's my go-to method for day ticket complexes, namely especially solid bags. They could just be such an edge. I love seeing people catch fish, and if there's anything anyone can take from this video of how I use PVA and put it into their own angling and catch fish with it, I'd be absolutely buzzing. Before we start, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I know there's a lot about PVA that's been written about, it's online, magazines, etc. First of all, we'll start talking about solid bags. Now, if somebody gave me one tactic to use for the rest of my life whilst carp fishing, it'd be solid bags. There's a lot of preconception about them picking up smaller fish, but I've caught God knows how many 30-pounders, real big fish. I've had a couple of 40s with them as well, and they can single out bigger fish if you're willing to put the effort in with them. They can be a little bit finicky at times to tie, but it's like everything in life, once you do it a couple of times and you start getting better and quicker, more efficient. So, constructing a solid bag. The first thing I do obviously is tie the rig, and that for me is just a very simple German rig with a supple hook link. My bait of choice is an NS1 Mini. Fishing that with I always use a size 6 curve shank hook, and the balance is just absolutely perfect. I used to use a lot of corn, fake corn in solid bags, but more and more venues like my syndicate are banning plastic for fish safety and fish welfare, and these are superb. They don't lose the buoyancy, so I've left them out 24, 48 hours and they're still exactly the same, and when the bag breaks down, the hook bait will just sat proud on top, and it's superb. So I'll add a little bit of pellet into the solid bag first. I'm using the small version of the solid bag, and then I'll lay the hook link in, always making sure, and it's really important for me, that the hook lays flat and there's separation from your bait. So then I'll add a bit more pellet, and then what I'll do is I'll compress it with the lead, offer the lead in, fill it up with more pellet in the mix, and make sure when I'm tying it up, make sure it's all tight. And I use PVA tape. I'm not a fan of licking and sticking. I think you can't get as tight a bag as what I like to get. So I use PVA tape, go around it and tie 4 granny knots, trim it away. And then what I do is, to make it really airtight and aerodynamic, is just give the corners a lick, fold them over, and almost have it so it's more streamlined. And you can really hammer the bags out if you're fishing at distance, you're fishing in a crosswind, doesn't really affect it. And then one thing I like to do, so through spring, summer and autumn, as soon as that water's warm through early spring, salmon oil is my #1 choice. I've caught so many fish using salmon oil. And then in the winter, I use something like the Amino 365 or the Life System Bait Booster. That's a really good liquid to use in solid bags as well. Solid bags as well, they're so versatile. You can tailor your mix to exactly how you want to, and you can be completely different to everyone else that's on the lake. So whether you're adding a bit of GLM powder, you're adding a bit of liver powder, it's just going to be different, and the liquids you put in as well. So like I said before, I love salmon oil, but you can add anything. All the range is PVA friendly. Now, a lot of people just associate PVA tape with tying off solid bags or PVA bags, but it's not so in vogue now. But stringers used to be incredible, and the last couple of years I've really started using stringers again. Just a 3-bait stringer, and it's really inconspicuous, but how it sits, you know your hook bait and your hook is going to be tangle free, and you've got a couple of baits just around your rig, and it's I've seen fish in the edge pick them up. There's just no caution. They just drop down, they'll have a mouthful, and when you're away, you've got a fish. And it's such a simple way of doing it. Even if you're fishing out of distance, I've done well using it with a throwing stick, fishing over spreads of boilie as well. They are a fantastic way of fishing effectively, and you know, it's something that not many people do anymore either. I'm not one to just leave the bait hanging off the hook, so I like having it almost like a loop. So I leave a long tag on, loop it, and then go back around the hair so it secures everything in place. Like now we're using a blowback rig, you know that that's just not going to slip, and everything's going to be absolutely perfect when it goes in onto your chosen spot. So another purpose for PVA tape that I use it for, and it's something so simple but so effective, is tying the hair, tying it off the back of your hair. So for example, like a blowback rig like we're using, if you're pointing it out a good distance, sometimes there's a chance that your hair can tangle around your hook, whereas if you fix it in place by just a couple of overhand loops to the hook, to the shank of the hook, you know, once it gets down onto the bottom, whether you're fishing in 4 foot or 14 foot of water, it's going to be absolutely perfect. And that's the same, you know, slip D rigs. I've used it on there before, because when you're putting them out a long way, I always worry if the D's move slightly. It just eliminates everything. It's a really effective way of getting it out without affecting your casting. So PVA mesh, one way I like to fish it is having 3 baits in your mesh, tying it off, but then putting your hair through so everything's connected, and you can really put that out a long way. You know, it's going to be tangle free, and it's not, you know, as soon as it hits the water, sometimes, like if you're hooking it just fishing long range, there's a chance it could come off as soon as the water reacts with the PVA. But having your hook bait in the PVA and attaching it afterwards, you just know it's going to be absolutely tangle free, and there's going to be a small parcel of bait out there as well. So another way I like to fish with PVA, and that's using mesh, is with sticks. Now, I love using PVA sticks, especially when you're fishing in really silty areas where there's always a tendency with a solid bag in softer areas to plunge into the silt, whereas I know we're using it on a leg clip now, but if you were using that fishing into silt, you could almost fish with a helicopter rig, take the bead up, and you can have a small parcel of attraction. You know your rig's going to be clean, and it's just going to flutter and sit on top of the silt, even if your lead plunges into it. So in PVA sticks, I like an oily stick, especially in the warmer months. So I've been doing well using the ProStim liver bag mix, adding to that the oily bag mix, which is what I use in my solid bags as well, and then giving it a bit of a coating in salmon oil. And you just know that, like for example, you're fishing in silt, that's just going to flutter on top with the oil, with it being an oily mix. If you're fishing in deep water, I've done really well on them in the autumn when I'm fishing in 18-20 foot, when the fish are searching out them deeper areas looking for the natural food. You know, there's always little bits and pieces fluttering up to the surface as well, and it does draw fish down. I've seen that with my own eyes. Another way of doing it as well, you don't need to just fish a small stick, you can fish a longer stick. If you're using a 5-inch hook link, make a 5-inch stick. You know, your rig's going to be absolutely sat proud there. There's going to be no tangles whatsoever. So again, PVA sticks, really forgotten about tactic in my eyes. It's just not in vogue anymore, but they're still as effective as they were 10-15 years ago when everyone seemed to be using them. So another form of PVA mesh is using the bigger size mesh and making golf ball size bags. 99% of the time when I'm doing this, I'll use out and out boilie crumb. So for example, the ProStim liver. Obviously you can make the mesh really tight and compact, and the tighter the better, because once it goes through the layers and lays on the bottom, the tighter you can get it, the more of an explosive mix reaction you'll see, and the crumb just spreads out. As you see, I'm with the longer tag end, I'm almost hooking it around and then going back on itself again. Another really good example of PVA mesh is when you're surface fishing. Now, I like to use as small a float as possible, even free lining. So if you make a mesh bag up with a few mixes in and just side hook it, you can get away with using a smaller float. You can get it out further or if you're freelining as well. Freeline is a great way. Not a lot of people do it when they're surface fishing, but it just adds weight. You can get out and you're creating a nice spread of bait around your hook bait. You can have a tiny parcel, unless you get picked up by the seagulls like we've had. You'll have a little tiny parcel of mixers drifting around, and a lot of the time they'll come up, they'll pick 1, 2, 3 and then bang you away. Right, so unfortunately the weather's been against us, to say the least. Not looking for excuses. It's been absolutely roasting. Keith, the cameraman's got to shoot off now. I'm going to stay for a couple of hours. Thanks for watching, and if you can take anything away from this video, I've been made up with it. I hope you found it informative, and hopefully you can put it into your own angling, be a bit different from everyone else and reap the rewards of PVA. Right, as if by magic, Keith's gone home. An hour or so later, I've had one. Off the top, booked a PVA bag full of mixers out, and yeah, after being really finicky, managed to get a take, and it's resulted in this lovely mid 20. So yeah, happy days. Enjoy.